What's going on, Tamers? East here. So very recently in the Digimon card game, Bandai pulled this really cool move where they took two decks that had virtually no overlap, those being the Digicross focused LordKnightmon's deck and the Warrior focused LordKnightmon's deck, and with just a couple of key cards in between, we're able to unite the two into this new tribal deck out of thin air. Personally, I thought this was a really cool move, and so I wanted to make a video about that. Unfortunately, this ain't that video. And so Digimon players, clever as they are, took all this tribal nonsense and just tossed it out the window. They realized that LordKnightmon has more in common with the likes of Scooby-Doo, and so they combined this Royal Knight Shaggy with dogs and ghosts, aka the Dark Animal engine, and the results were pretty spooky. And so with that said, in this video, I want to talk about some of the reasons that this LordKnightmon and Dark Animal mystery machine is so powerful, some of the plays that really put it over the top, and maybe some ways that you can fight against it. So let's dive in. So this combination is pretty terrifying for two main reasons. The first is that it doesn't take a whole lot to actually get set up, and the second is that once you are set up, your board is a direct threat to whatever your opponent has in play. And so those two things can actually force your opponent to stay in raising longer to just give you free swings in the meantime. So let me show you what I mean over the course of a few turns. So now with the deck actually set, let's take a look at some of the early turns. This is going to be pretty straightforward. Turn 1, turn 2. You just want to get a level 3 in raising, something like a Goblimon or the EX5 Labramon are great choices, my recommendations actually. And then you want to play out some sort of like resource option card, something like a Wisdom Training or a purple or violet memory boost. This way you can get a little bit of card draw, and then you can also reduce cost or gain memory the following turns. In this case, let's go with the Wisdom Training because it is turn 1, and we don't want to pass too much memory over to our opponent. We'll search 2 off the top of the deck here. We'll grab the Digimon X just because we can use him next turn for the evolve. From here, let's imagine that our opponent makes a pretty standard opening play going second where, level 3 in raising, evolve into level 4 for 2, and then they play a training card of their own and put you at 2 to start your turn. And so with just this minor amount of setup, you're ready to build an entire LordKnightmon board. Don't believe me? Keep watching. So let's imagine we start with 2 memory here. Pretty basic turn. We're going to move out the Goblimon into the battle area. And immediately we're going to spin that Wisdom Training we played last turn. We just want to get to our level 4 very quickly, and that's going to be into, for 0 cost here, the Digimon X Antibody. We'll draw for Evolve. Don't forget to also draw and then discard a card from the Digimon X Antibody's Evolve effect. Now, for this, you're going to probably want to discard a level 3 Digimon, and you've got a lot of choices in this deck. Some really easy, simple ones like another Goblimon would be good. You've also got things like some Floodgates, like Gazimon, as well as the... Oh, I hate this guy, the Psychemon. This guy, what a smug Floodgate, and he does all the work, I swear. You've also got some really interesting choices in things like the one-of Goblimon X Antibody you might run in the deck, or like a Labramon. That could be a good way to get some cards back if you've got a bigger trash count. Or even, a really cheeky pick here, the Sistermon Blanc, who gives your Royal Knights Digimon Decoy. And because this deck is running LordKnightmon at the top end, she's a perfect fit, and she also helps you to discard and draw more cards at the same time. So for this example, we're going to keep it really simple, and we're just going to toss away the Goblimon from the Digimon X's effect. And because we tossed a card into the trash, we discarded a card, we're going to first gain 1 memory off of the Goblimon's inheritance effects whenever we discard a card once per turn. And we're also going to draw 1 more card because of the Tsunomon's inheritance effect, the level 2 Digi-Egg. So draw a card and then also gain 1 memory. So now you're at +1 off of an evolve, and you can go directly into your level 5. Now, for this deck, we're going to actually use the X Antibody Protoform as a way to reduce our Digivolution costs and also get some extra effects off of our X Antibody Digimon. So with this, we're going to do cost -1, evolve into Cerberusmon X Antibody. So that'll be a 2 cost evolve here. Going to draw for the evolution, and then don't forget to use his own evolve effect, which is again draw 1 and then discard 1. This time though, you're going to want to try and discard a level 4. And this deck has some great level 4 choices. You've got things like the Ogremon, which is been a staple in the Dark Animal decks in the past, as well as things like the Digimon X Antibody we saw before. My favorite one, though, has got to be the new BT19 Deltamon, though. This guy is fantastic, slots perfectly into the deck. He's got the on-play, on-evolve, and on-deletion effect, where you trash a card in hand and then delete one of your opponent's level 4 lower Digimon. So fantastic removal off of this guy. And then for this effect, we're actually going to drop, really simple choice here, the Ogremon into the trash. And his secondary effect is that if he has Cerberusmon or the X Antibody Protoform in his sources, you can actually play level 3 from the trash. And we're actually going to get the level 3 Goblimon that we slotted in there before. And now that we've got the Goblimon on the board, we actually have one more effect to resolve and inherit it, so that is going to be the Doberman X antibody effect, who says whenever you play Digimon by an effect once per turn, you can gain a memory. So we're actually going to go to 2. So with all of this minor setup here, you've gotten to a level 5 with an X antibody protoform, and played a level 3 on the board for 0 memory. What a demonic move. And now, that was basically a free evolve. We can finish up our turn in either playing out the LordKnightmon here for 3 cost. His evolve effect lets us also play level 4 on the field. And we have set our opponent to 1 memory, which is not a lot to work with. On top of that, the LordKnightmon can also redirect an attack into him if your opponent tries to either go for security or, they have some way to attack your other Digimon. And with just 1 memory here, it's typically not going to be very easy to actually get through him. There is another option to this play if we imagine resetting here back to 2, putting this guy back. And before we go into the LordKnightmon, if we do have something like a purple scramble here, we can actually reduce that evolve cost by 1, making it a 2 cost evolve into the LordKnightmon. I prefer this if my opponent has maybe like a memory setting tamer, so they're going to start at 3 anyway, and you can't lock them at 1. This way you can get another level 4 out, and you can do other stuff on the board like swing or evolve again, or start developing the stacks with level 3 or the level 4. And you've got the safety of not only the X antibody protoform on this stack, so when this stack would be destroyed, you basically recover and put the X antibody protoform in security, and then you could take a card from the sources here and just add it back to hand. And then after that, if your entire board gets wiped, the purple scramble here is going to let you start the turn, or the following turn, with at least level 3 and a top card stacked on top of your deck. But again, that's only in the case that your opponent might have some memory setting tamer. But in this case, I would prefer to actually just set them to 1. So let's move the memory counter over here, take that back, and then this is the board they're presented with. And so far through this process, we've given our opponent 3 memory to work with total in the entire game. And that following turn, even if they dip it over to 2 again somehow, and not 3, you have some pretty incredible plays at your disposal. From here, now that you have your LordKnightmon set up and you've got some other fellows on board, you can go directly into your boss monster for the deck, which is LordKnightmon X Antibody. That's a 1 cost evolve, draw for the evolve, and he's got an insane rondo of effects here. So he's got collision and piercing, so whatever they have on the board must block, so you can keep their board clean this way. Additionally, whenever you evolve into him, you can de-digivolve your opponent's Digimon 1, and also you can set a Digimon on your opponent's side of the board and prevent them from evolving. So this is going to prevent the counterplay from an ace. So now that you have collision piercing, you can force a Digimon to block. It can't ace, and you can ensure its death. And you can check security after that because of the piercing. Feels like a Billy Mays commercial right now, because even though I listed off all those effects this card has, wait, there's more. He also has the blanket effect to give all Digimon with Knightmon in their text on their card somewhere, plus 3000 DP and Alliance. So he has included himself, LordKnightmon X Antibody, and the effect itself just grants the effect. He's going to attack, and once you attack, you can use the Alliance and rest something like the Goblimon, and that's going to give you 2 checks, plus 3000 from his own effect, and then plus 2000 here. So huge numbers on this guy. And then you can use the Cerberusmon X Antibody's inheritance effect to destroy your Digimon, and then become active. So if your opponent had a board, they're forced to block. You kill that Digimon almost guaranteed. Then you pierce check 2 because of the Alliance, and now you've got a active Digimon and 2 more swings minimum at your disposal. From here, you can do the same thing again without the Cerberusmon X inheritance effect. You could just rest both these fellas, and that's 2 more checks to security. So by turn 3, they have 1 security left, and you have a board, and they probably have nothing out there. They probably haven't developed a second stack yet, and things are looking real rough. And then from here, with just 1 memory remaining, I mean, you have a ton of options at your disposal. You can play one of the resources option that we played earlier in the game, either the training or the memory boost, and only pass over 1 or 2. Alternatively, you also have the purple scramble here, because you can start to develop the second level 4, and you can put that into a level 5. For example, we can evolve for 2 into something like the Cerberusmon. So we showed the Cerberusmon X Antibody before, but having the Cerberusmon is really nice because you can also give one of the Digimon you play by an effect rush with him in inheritance. So let's imagine you go into, for example, a secondary Cerberusmon X Antibody here later on. The Digimon that you play from the trash, you can also just give it rush with the Cerberus X's inheritance effect. So you've got even more swings on board, not to mention the LordKnightmon, so if he survives, you can destroy him to make him active. And so the deck just gets out of control after that. Not to mention that all the memory you're gaining off of Digimon played by effects is going to steamroll every single turn. So with the option cards that are going to give you value and resource, these guys, you start to snowball memory very quickly. And so in a nutshell, that is the power of LordKnightmon's X Antibody. The Dark Animal Engine giving you memory every turn, plus more Bidos on board, so that your LordKnightmon on the top end can take advantage of them by destroying them to become active again, also use them for alliance. And then also, you can prevent your opponent from basically playing the game because of the ability to prevent evolution, and the collision ability forces your opponents to block if they have a Digimon on board. Alright, so after hearing all of that, you're probably thinking, wow, that is a hell of a deck to fight against. And you're not wrong. It is incredibly strong. But there are some things you can do to fight against it. Now, before we actually hop into that section, I do want to take a quick moment and say that if you've enjoyed the explanation of LordKnightmon's deck so far, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more cool informal videos like this one, as well as more digital monster gaming directly injected into your YouTube feed. And with that, let's take a look at some defensive measures you can take when fighting against this deck. So what makes fighting against LordKnightmon's X so difficult is that turn that he comes onto the board, he locks one of your opponent's Digimon out from evolving. And so, because of this, it's really hard to make some counterplay using something like LordKnightmon's X Antibody, or the BT16 Imperial Digimon Dragon mode, which could evolve when your opponent plays a card by an effect, or something like Return to the Primogenitor, which will allow you to evolve and not be deleted. Now, because all these things are basically locked out, you have to make sure that you cut your opponent off and stop them from getting to LordKnightmon's X quickly using floodgates. So right now, there's a lot of floodgates in the game that would help out, because this deck tries to gain memory or cheat memory through so many different ways. Pretty much any floodgate is going to do the trick. You've got things like the Shamamon in red, as well as the Gajimon in purple. I mean, this card is actually included in the deck in case of the mirror, which prevent your opponent from gaining memory outside of Tamers. So those inheritance effects that give them free memory, no longer in play. Oh yeah, how could I forget the cute little Madoki Betamon here as well. There are even floodgates that shut your opponent off from playing Digimon by effects. And things like the red Gotsumon or the green Pomumon will just prevent your opponent from playing Digimon by effects outright, and that means when they go up the line, they get nothing. And then finally, another way that this deck cheats memory is through the use of X Antibody Protoform, as well as the Wisdom training that we used in the example before. By reducing Digivolution cost, they can get to the level 6s more quickly, but you can use floodgates like the Shakomon here, who can prevent your opponent from doing just that. They can't reduce Digivolution costs at all. Another way you can fight against this deck is by taking advantage of the fact that LordKnightmon's X puts on a ton of pressure on your Digimon on board. However, Tamers are basically untouchable by this deck. If I remember correctly, I don't think there's anything that can really touch a Tamer unless they tech in some crazy stuff. And so, setting up Tamers in preparation for when the LordKnightmon's X comes out in order to delete them using something like Purple Hybrid or Red Hybrid is a really good idea. I know that idea might sound a little bit niche, but with the resurgence of hybrids and Tamer cards overall, I think that's a viable strategy right now. Additionally, LordKnightmon's puts on a ton of pressure offensively, but defensively is actually quite weak. I mean, a simple destruction effect would destroy this guy. Additionally, you've got things like Retaliation, and because he has Collision, Retaliation is like a perfect counter to him. You can just block with Digimon with Retaliation, and they would both die. And so sometimes it might just be worth waiting until they've got their LordKnightmon set up so you have the perfect counterplay ready and waiting. I do want to point out, though, that this deck does have some counterplay against some of the things I've just mentioned. That is one of the reasons that it is so strong. Although most of the deck is focused on getting to this line here and promoting the LordKnightmon's X, they do have a couple of cards that might be useful in their own back pocket. Things like the Deltamon that we mentioned in the example before. He can pop floodgates as well as maybe some hybrids on the board. Level 4s or lower on play and on deletion. Additionally, they've got things like Chimeramon. I've seen some decks like taking like one copy of this guy as a way to give a nice little blanket to a lot of the little weenies out there on your opponent's side of the board. As well as, and this is the real problem, Shine Greymon Ruin Mode. That blanket minus 5k is just going to wipe out anything that is like a floodgate or, you know, weak. And so that's going to pretty much wrap things up. I hope that the next time that you sit down and play a game, if you're sitting across from a LordKnightmon's X player, now you have all the tools in your knowledge utility belt to fight against them. I just want to reiterate that if you like these kinds of videos and you want to see more Digimon card game content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, consider becoming a YouTube member as well. You'll get really cool perks and bonuses like early access to my videos, as well as the ability to vote on decks that are featured in other videos. Actually, the reason that we're even showing this video here today is because my members voted on showing off the LordKnightmon's deck in last week's meta report. Side note, if you're actually looking for a deck list for the LordKnightmon's deck we featured today, there's actually one in my BT19 Week 1 meta report video, so definitely check that out on the channel as well. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.